For the self-proclaimed Islamic State, it was the ultimate prize, taking Iraq's second city, Mosul. It's been in the hands of the ultra-hardline Sunni Muslim group for almost 2 years now. But Iraqi and Kurdish forces, backed by the air power of an international coalition, have launched an offensive to take it back. Euronews has had exclusive access to their battle, one where front lines are elusive and constantly moving. Mortar shells fall near us as we film the military operations. Defeating ISIL was never going to be easy. Here, we're with the Iraqi military as they set their sights on retaking the village of Al-Nazir. It's south of Mosul, the city ISIL calls its capital in Iraq. Several villages under militant control lie in the way of Iraqi forces as they try to reach Mosul. ISIL took the city back in June 2014 in a sudden attack by their fighters, one that took the world by surprise. It's become a power base linked to their Syrian stronghold, Raqqa. Soon after seizing Mosul, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the head of the militant group, declared a caliphate, a state governed in line with Islamic law. Muslims everywhere were called on to swear their allegiance. But how was it that ISIL fighters could seemingly take Mosul so easily and so quickly?
ISIL group seized an estimated $3 billion worth of weapons. That's in Mosul alone. It's a huge amount, which would last them for a long time, so many battles. The Iraqi army allowed ISIL to enter Mosul, believing that this would enable the army to surround them inside the city, fight them easily and defeat them. But unfortunately, the plan failed. We asked for the Peshmerga forces to enter Mosul to support us, but former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki opposed that. I myself contacted the US side as well, specifically Mr. Brett McGurk, and I met him in Erbil City and told him that Mosul would soon fall into the hands of ISIL, but he didn't show any interest and didn't even have a response.
Fast forward, and after many months of preparations, the Iraqi army, Kurdish Peshmerga forces and the international coalition are working together to wipe out ISIL. Here in Makhmur, 50 kilometers from Mosul, they come together to plan their operations. The aim is to liberate Mosul and Raqqa in Syria by the end of the year, but there's skepticism about whether that will happen. The Peshmerga commander for Makhmur district is not sure.
The international alliance is not giving the necessary serious support in the war against ISIL. ISIL now has a state and a capital, which is Mosul, and it's a fact they also have military training centers. So with all those capabilities, and given the way the international alliance is dealing with it all, they'll never be able to defeat ISIL.
But amongst the Iraqi military, hopes are high about defeating ISIL, boosted by the recapturing of villages within hours. It's a success that Iraq's Minister of Defense, Khaled al-Obeidi, has been keen to seize. He's come here, to Makhmur district, to get a first-hand look at the frontline military operations.
Both the Iraqi army and the Iraqi people are fighting ISIL on behalf of the rest of the world. The international alliance, though, is providing us with huge support in this war. The real challenge comes after the military victory. We need real development in our country.
Despite the efforts of Iraqi forces and the security zone they've created to protect Makhmur district, ISIL remains a threat. Mortar shells, missiles and car bombs are all used to try and attack these barracks. Deadly challenges which are slowing the push to Mosul. ISIL groups are using Mosul residents as human shields, and this is a big obstacle for the Iraqi army. They can't retake Mosul by harming their own people. The Iraqi army and Peshmerga forces have created these advanced military barracks, surrounded by mined trenches, along the borders of Mahmud district, to block any attempt from ISIL militants to get into the area.
During the night 2 days ago, we faced 5 successive attacks from ISIL. But we were able to defeat them and drive them out from the village after killing about 12 of them. ISIL's currently on the defensive, counting mainly on landmines, car bombs and suicide attacks.
We're moving towards the front line of the joint forces, around Mahmud, arriving in the area where the final barracks are held by the Kurdish Peshmerga. It's an advanced support post for the Iraqi army and helps to secure the borders of the Kurdish region. Mortar shells fall around us again as we prepare to interview one of the Peshmerga field commanders.
We're fighting ISIL in tough circumstances. The Baghdad government's following orders from al-Maliki. It's suspended the budget for this region, it isn't paying soldiers, and is not providing weapons.
The Peshmerga are not joining the Iraqi army in retaking the villages, blaming political and financial reasons caused by the issues with the government in Baghdad. The Kurdish forces' mission over here is limited to protecting the borders and holding off ISIL fighters, especially suicide attackers. They also provide the logistic and military support for the joint forces on the front lines. The area where Kurdish forces are engaged is estimated to be around 1,000 kilometers. We're now moving on to a military outpost known as Sultan Abdullah Barracks. It's named after a nearby village, still under ISIL control, like other villages along the Tigris River. It's considered to be one of the most important front lines for the Peshmerga because of its location, a connecting line between Kirkuk, Erbil and Mosul. There have been fierce battles here with militants said to have used chemical weapons. If this fell, so could Erbil. That's the worry. The Peshmerga forces have found a way to listen into ISIL communications. They say they can decode fake words used, and that's helped them to see off attacks that were being planned by the militants. They show us another tactic to stop the movement of would-be attackers. Bombs and landmines are set up, and these are detonated remotely. ISIL militants are not far from these barracks. This is the first front line with them. They are around 800 meters to a kilometer away. It's a constant job to keep this area secure, one that's of so much importance.
If we see any movement on the opposite side, our troops shoot immediately with sniper rifles sometimes and heavy machine guns other times. We want to prevent them sneaking into our territory.
While we're here, 2 ISIL militants are spotted. The Peshmerga fighters open fire. That's part of everyday life in the battlefield here. We're now leaving the Sultan Abdullah outpost and heading back to Makhmur. We arrive at Black Tiger Camp, the headquarters of the Major General in charge of the Peshmerga in Makhmur district. The Kurdish fighters have played a big role, retaking a number of strategic areas inside both Iraq and Syria.
The Peshmerga forces are deployed along around 1,000 kilometers of front lines facing ISIL. But during our war against them, we're facing all kinds of tactics. We need sophisticated equipment, such as radar, cameras, and heat-seeking devices to stop them. Despite a lack of equipment, our soldiers are still in high spirits, especially at the site attacked with chemical mustard gas for the first time since the war started. There have been more than 30 attacks against this site where you're standing, yet ISIL has not been able to move forward.
We're on the move again, this time to the oil-rich city of Kirkuk, seized by ISIL and later recaptured by the Peshmerga and Iraqi army. The city is inhabited by a Kurdish majority, along with Arabs and Turkmen. It's one of the highest mountain tops in the region. ISIL had desperately tried to keep it under its control, but ultimately failed. Now, Kirkuk is protected by Peshmerga fighters spread along the mountains, not far from Al-Hawiya, only a few kilometers from where ISIL are in huge numbers. We visit this front, guarded by the Kurdish Liberation Movement, which includes fighters from Iran.
ISIL has been attacking all areas in Kurdistan and were able to seize a lot of land, getting closer to the Dibs district, west of Kirkuk, as these areas were under the Iraqi army's control, but they withdrew following al-Maliki's orders, leaving their advanced weapons in the hands of ISIL. This allowed them to become a powerful force using those weapons against us during the war.
It wasn't easy for us to get access to this site. It's a tense place. Security fears are high. We're played a voice recording of one of the battles soldiers are said to have engaged in against ISIL. It seems their cause and the threat posed by ISIL is making them stronger in their resistance. The Kurdish fighters taking on ISIL have seized lots of weapons and are proud of their achievements so far. A female Kurdish unit is also involved in the fight against the militants, and they've notched up some successes in the battles for Kobani and Sinjar, and the mission to retake Yazidi community areas. One female fighter told us she's seeking revenge for ISIL's killing of women.
Despite the strength and brutality that ISIL groups are known for, they failed to reach our sites here. Our soldiers are solid men and women, and they've sacrificed a lot in all these rounds of fighting. I myself will continue the fight to avenge the women killed by ISIL.
As the Iraqi army battles on to try and retake Mosul, people are continuing to leave villages where military operations are taking place. We see dozens of residents fleeing Al-Nazir, fleeing fighting between ISIL and the Iraqi army. Some of those who leave their homes are lucky enough to reach Makhmur district, but others are not so fortunate. Some lose their lives. Around 3,000 people have reached Makhmur. Children, women and families, some separated from each other. They're facing shortages of food, medical care and places to settle.
We're hungry and thirsty. This is torture. It feels like we're imprisoned. We're scared. There were bombs and mortar shells falling over our heads.
The Kurdish security authorities tend to separate men and women when they arrive. They check ID and personal information, fearing that ISIL militants may use it as a cover to get amongst those here. We now get the chance to visit one of the villages recently taken back from ISIL, moving closer to the front line. We move from the military headquarters we're visiting to Kubardan village west of Makhmur. We're entering open land where ISIL could strike at any time. This Iraqi army vehicle was apparently destroyed by ISIL. Suddenly, we're stopped by an Iraqi minesweeping team. They're alerting us that the road we're taking has not been fully secured. Just a few hours before, a landmine exploded on the same route, hitting an Iraqi military vehicle. After our tense journey, we finally arrive at the outskirts of Kubardan village. These are the bodies of ISIL fighters. There is a smell of death. For the Iraqi army, this village is considered a crucial front line with ISIL. This area is still exposed to mortar shells. We were given strict military instructions from the force accompanying us to be extremely alert, to watch our steps, as landmines are everywhere. As we move further into Kubardan, we start to see more Iraqi soldiers, which is reassuring. This village was once home to up to 300 people, but now, after all that's happened, it's completely empty. A ghost area. The Iraqi military give us a security briefing. This village is not considered 100% secure.
When we fought to retake this village, 2 of my fellow soldiers were killed and some were wounded. But we still have high hopes of more victories. Then people can return to their homes and will live in peace.
There's been a turf war here, evidence of car bombs used by suicide attackers. Another militant tactic is the digging of tunnels. Passages that connect houses and sometimes even villages together. Tunnels are considered a big challenge for the Iraqi army here. ISIL groups dig these tunnels to facilitate their movement and also to protect themselves from gunfire and airstrikes. It's an underground labyrinth in a village which is now eerily quiet.
When ISIL fighters are under attack, they escape to this tunnel that extends 1.5 kilometers. They get out of the other end. We find so many of these tunnels.
The village may be silent, but the sound of war is not far away. Five days before our visit, an ISIL suicide attacker ran towards Iraqi soldiers inside the village mosque. They shot at him, but he was able to blow himself up inside, killing and injuring those around him. Despite incidents like this, ISIL has been losing ground.
We've been making good progress. The spirit of our soldiers is high. We hope to defeat and erase their existence. They're such a cowardly terrorist group.
There's the same determination amongst the female Peshmerga fighters we meet in Kirkuk. Naishtaman is 19 and decided to go to the front line against ISIL. Just married, her husband is a fighter too.
I've shot ISIL militants during the battles. Some of them were injured by my bullets and some killed. We've defended this front line several times. My personal life and my military fighting life are connected, but my personal dream is to live in peace and free with my family. That's all I wish.
Naishtaman's dream is shared by many. For now, though, the bloody battle to defeat ISIL rages on.